Hear me by the Spirit of God. This Wednesday morning is not casual, not routine, and certainly not ordinary. Today, the 26th of November, 2025, carries prophetic weight. There is a shifting in the realm of the Spirit, and heaven is summoning you to rise with urgency, to take command of your atmosphere before the adversary attempts to script your day. This is a morning of divine repositioning. This is a morning of spiritual activation. This is a morning where your prayer becomes the legislation that governs the outcomes of your life. The Spirit of the Lord is impressing this urgency. Do not walk into this day unarmed, unaware, or unaligned. There are doors waiting for your command, instructions waiting to be downloaded, and breakthroughs waiting to be triggered. Yet they require a praying posture, a focused mind, and a voice that recognizes its spiritual jurisdiction. Passive faith will not govern this day. Prophetic precision will. As you step into this morning, I decree that every demonic interception is dismantled, every invisible barrier is shattered, and every cycle designed to delay or distract you is broken. Heaven is releasing fresh oil, fresh fire, and fresh strength, but you must rise and command your day with intention, authority, and prophetic insight. This is not the hour to retreat. This is the hour to advance. I declare that this Wednesday marks a spiritual turning point. Delays collapse, confusion dissolves, clarity arises, strategies are being revealed, momentum is being imparted, acceleration is being released. What you decree in this moment will ripple through every hour ahead of you. What you bind now will not rise later. What you loose now shall manifest in its appointed time. What you speak now becomes the architecture of your day. Prepare your spirit. Silence every distraction. Step boldly into the realm of divine authority. This is the moment where heaven leans in to respond to your voice. This morning prayer is not routine. It is spiritual warfare, prophetic alignment, and atmospheric construction. Get ready, because as we pray, the supernatural is about to intersect with your natural. Angelic forces are being assigned. Favor is being positioned. Breakthrough is moving toward you. God is aligning every detail of your steps today. Let us enter this prayer with fire, with urgency, and with prophetic authority. This is your morning to shift the day before the day shifts you. Commanding the morning to establish divine order over the entire day is not merely a spiritual discipline. It is a prophetic strategy that positions your life under the government of heaven before anything else has the opportunity to influence your trajectory. When you rise early and speak into the dawning of a new day, you are not speaking into empty air. You are legislating, establishing, arranging, and authorizing heaven's agenda to find full expression in your earthly reality. The morning is the womb of the day, the place where outcomes are conceived, shaped, and spiritually directed. Those who understand this never enter their day passively. They rise with intentionality and spiritual authority, knowing that the first words they speak carry the power to fortify their destiny. Commanding the morning is an act of alignment. It is the moment where your spirit comes into agreement with what God has already determined. It is the moment you declare that chaos will not dictate your day, distractions will not govern your time, and the adversary will not infiltrate your schedule. It is the moment you set spiritual boundaries, invite divine intervention, and activate the supernatural over the natural. When you speak over the morning, you summon light to drive out darkness in every dimension of your life. You summon clarity to replace confusion, peace to silence anxieties, and strength to override weariness. Commanding the morning is the spiritual act of deciding in advance that the day will unfold under God's order, not under the pressure of circumstances or the projections of the enemy. When you command the morning, you awaken your spirit to the consciousness of victory, not defeat. You step into your rightful place as one who carries dominion, as one who is authorized to decree a thing and watch it be established. Many people wake up and hope for a good day, but those who command the morning architect the day. They shape it with their words. They set its course with their declaration. They pull heaven into time. They refuse to let the day unfold randomly. Commanding the morning means refusing to surrender the early hours to lethargy, passivity, or spiritual dullness. It means rising with a prophetic alertness, a heightened spiritual sensitivity to discern what must be activated, canceled, released, or bound. It is your opportunity to dismantle any traps the adversary prepared overnight, to overturn any whispers spoken against you, to nullify any assignments forming in the unseen, and to release angelic forces to walk with you throughout the day. It is your chance to prophesy fruitfulness over your work, protection over your decisions, wisdom over your interactions, and grace over your movements. The morning responds to the voice of the one who understands that every new sunrise is an invitation to influence the spiritual realm before you step into the physical. Commanding the morning gives you the authority to establish the rhythm of your day. Without spiritual command, the day tends to pull you into its demands, pressures, and distractions. But when you rise early and speak life, your spirit goes ahead of you. You go into the day with divine order already set. Instead of being reactive, you become proactive. Instead of being caught off guard, you are spiritually armed. Instead of being shaped by whatever arises, you set the tone and determine the pace. Divine order means that everything falls into alignment with God's timing, God's will, and God's purpose. It means the right opportunities present themselves at the right time. It means your steps are orchestrated, your decisions are guided, and your mind is stabilized. When divine order rules your day, nothing is accidental. Even interruptions become divine appointments. Challenges become stepping stones. Delays become redirections. Your spirit becomes synchronized with heaven. You begin to notice God's hand in every detail. You begin to walk with a sense of spiritual awareness, knowing that the day has been blessed, established, and arranged by the one who holds time in his hands. Commanding the morning is an act of reclaiming spiritual territory. The early hours are often contested in the spiritual realm because they hold the power to influence everything that follows. This is why the enemy attempts to keep people spiritually dull, distracted, and passive during this crucial time. But when you rise and speak, you disarm powers operating in the shadows. You overturn cycles that seek to repeat themselves. You break emotional patterns that attempt to cling to you. You silence voices that try to speak defeat into your spirit. You decree that you will walk in victory, clarity, strength, and focus. You call forth resources, breakthroughs, connections, and opportunities that have your name on them. You demand that every demonic delay releases what belongs to you. You summon the favor you need to enter doors that were previously closed. You speak to the day and command it to yield its increase, to surrender its hidden treasures, and to reveal pathways that lead toward your destiny. When you command the morning, you take authority over time. You declare that time will not work against you, but for you. You declare that the hours ahead will align with the assignments God has given you, that your energy will match your responsibilities, and that your mind will carry the clarity needed to make accurate decisions. Time becomes your servant, not your adversary. Commanding the morning is essential because divine order does not happen by accident. It happens by intention. When you speak into the morning, you activate angelic forces assigned to your life. You release divine protection over your steps. You authorize the supernatural to intervene in places where your natural ability may fall short. You begin the day with heaven watching over you, guiding you, shielding you, and working behind the scenes on your behalf. Divine order over your day means obstacles become opportunities, resistance becomes refinement, and limitations become launching pads. It means conversations are graced, decisions are sharpened, and connections are divinely orchestrated. It means you enter the day already spiritually charged, emotionally stabilized, and mentally fortified. When you speak to the morning, you tell your spirit to rise, your mind to be renewed, your emotions to be balanced, and your purpose to remain in focus. You awaken the warrior within you. You call forth the creative, resilient, disciplined version of yourself. You silence self-doubt and empower self-governance. You remind your spirit that you are not entering the day alone, but with the full backing of heaven. Commanding the morning establishes the spiritual infrastructure that holds your day together. It builds the foundation upon which every action, decision, and interaction will stand. And as you speak, heaven listens. Creation responds, and your day begins to align with divine order. Activating spiritual authority to override every hidden assignment of the enemy begins with understanding that you are not a passive participant in the unfolding of your day. You are a spiritual legislator, authorized by God to speak, decree, bind, loose, and interrupt anything that attempts to operate outside the will of God for your life. Spiritual authority is not a feeling, it is a position. It is the posture of someone who knows that heaven backs their words. Angels respond to their commands, and darkness retreats at the sound of their voice. When you activate spiritual authority, you are stepping into the identity God established for you before the foundations of the world. You are not negotiating with the enemy. You are enforcing divine law. You are not begging God for victory. You are executing the victory already secured. You are not surviving spiritual warfare. You are governing it. Authority is activated when your spirit rises above your emotions, above fear, above intimidation, and speaks with the conviction that you have the right to overturn every hidden assignment that attempts to steal your joy, sabotage your progress, or pollute your atmosphere. The enemy operates best in secrecy. He plants thoughts, distractions, discouragements, delays, and invisible barriers in the unseen realm. His assignments often begin silently through subtle interference, emotional agitation, unexpected conflicts, miscommunication, mental fog, fatigue, doubt, unnecessary setbacks, or unexplainable heaviness. These are not random occurrences. They are indicators that something has been launched against your forward movement. But when spiritual authority is activated, you become spiritually alert, able to discern what is natural and what is engineered from the shadows. Authority gives you the capacity to see beyond the surface, to recognize patterns, to identify spiritual interference, and to dismantle it before it gains momentum. It is the ability to intercept the enemy's plans while they are still forming, to cancel assignments before they take root, and to shut down spiritual operations before they manifest in the physical realm. Activating your authority means you refuse to allow anything to govern your day that has not been authorized by God. You refuse to tolerate oppression, confusion, or delay. You refuse to allow depression to linger, anxiety to dominate, or fear to dictate your decisions. You speak to the atmosphere and demand alignment. You speak to your mind and command peace. You speak to your environment and command stillness. You speak to every invisible adversary and strip it of influence. Authority is your spiritual weapon, your divine currency, your supernatural shield. The moment you activate it, everything in the unseen realm adjusts. Angels stand at attention, demons flee, obstacles weaken, and heaven reinforces your position. To override hidden assignments of the enemy, you must first take command of your internal world. The enemy often begins warfare by targeting the mind. He whispers lies, magnifies insecurities, distorts perspectives, and amplifies negative emotions. When you activate authority, you silence every voice that is not the voice of God. You dismantle every thought that rises against truth. You break internal agreements with fear, shame, worry, or inferiority. You reclaim your mental territory and declare that your mind is under divine governance. When your inner world is aligned, the enemy loses access points. Authority begins internally, but always produces external shifts. As your spirit rises, your atmosphere changes. As your thoughts align with truth, your environment begins to reflect order. As your declarations grow stronger, the grip of the enemy weakens. You begin to notice a lifting, a clearing, a breaking, an unfolding, because your spiritual authority is now pushing back against whatever was pushing against you. Activating authority also means refusing to react emotionally to everything that arises. The enemy thrives when you become reactive, impulsive, frustrated, or unfocused. But authority stabilizes your spirit. It makes you unshakable, unmoved, unbothered. You no longer respond to life from a place of fear. You respond from a place of dominion. Even when something unexpected appears, authority reminds you that you are not at the mercy of circumstances. You can speak to storms. You can rebuke winds. You can shift environments. You can cause turmoil to settle. You can command peace into chaos. Authority empowers you to operate from the top of the situation, not from beneath it. Hidden assignments often come through familiar patterns, cycles that try to repeat themselves because they have worked in the past. Old habits trying to resurface. Old triggers attempting to reopen. Old relationships trying to distract. Old fears attempting to reappear. The enemy loves cycles. You shut down anything that feels familiar but does not align with your future. You declare that what held you before will not hold you now. You declare that old doors remain closed. You declare that old battles will not return. You declare that you are evolving, growing, advancing, and no demonic assignment has the power to pull you back into what God has delivered you from. Authority is also activated through your voice. Silent Christians are defeated Christians. Authority requires sound, decrees, declarations, prophetic utterance, scriptural affirmation. When you speak, you are not simply expressing words. You are releasing legislation. You are issuing spiritual warrants. You are releasing divine commands into the atmosphere. The enemy understands authority and responds to it. He does not respond to wishful thinking or silent hope. He responds to authoritative words, spoken from a place of conviction. This is why your morning voice matters. This is why your declarations matter. This is why you cannot start the day speaking casually. When you activate authority with your voice, you force the enemy to retreat. You summon angelic assistance, and you shape the spiritual climate of your day. Activating spiritual authority also means stepping out of the victim mindset and into the conqueror identity. You are not at the mercy of life. Life is at the mercy of your spiritual position. You are not weak. You are empowered. You are not defenseless. You are armed with spiritual weapons. You are not surrounded by threats. You are surrounded by angels. You are not navigating the day alone. Heaven is fully engaged in your affairs. Authority reminds you that you carry the presence of God, the backing of the kingdom, and the force of the word. When you walk into a room, authority walks with you. When you make decisions, authority influences them. When you face challenges, authority provides solutions. When you encounter resistance, authority breaks it. When you are confronted by darkness, authority shines light that cannot be extinguished. To override the enemy's hidden assignments, you must also learn to speak into places you cannot see. Authority extends beyond your immediate environment. It reaches into the unseen. You speak into the next hour, the next meeting, the next encounter, the next decision. You block warfare before it forms. You cancel attacks before they activate. You shut down infiltration before it manifests. You command angels to go before you, behind you, and around you. You command protection over your family, clarity over your steps, and favor over your interactions. You cover your body, your mind, your finances, your purpose, and your plans. Authority becomes the wall that surrounds your day, the force that repels spiritual intruders, and the shield that deflects every fiery dart. Activating spiritual authority is the difference between drifting through the day and governing it. It is the difference between spiritual vulnerability and spiritual dominion. It is the difference between being attacked and being untouchable. When authority is activated, hidden agendas lose power, concealed traps lose effectiveness, spiritual interference loses access, and the enemy loses his ability to manipulate your atmosphere. You walk through the day with confidence, clarity, and command because you have already overridden whatever was designed to override you. Aligning your spirit with heaven's blueprint and daily prophetic instructions begins with the understanding that your life has a divine pattern, a spiritual architecture designed before time began, and the clearer you align with it, the more effortlessly you move through your day. When you rise in the morning and choose alignment, you are positioning yourself under the flow of God's wisdom, timing, rhythm, and intention. Heaven is never disorganized. Heaven is never confused. Heaven never reacts. It executes purpose with precision. When your spirit aligns with that heavenly order, you begin to discern what to say, what to pursue, what to delay, what to ignore, and what to give yourself to. Alignment is not passive, it is deliberate. It is the act of bringing your thoughts, emotions, decisions, and posture into harmony with the voice of God. It means refusing to be governed by impulse, fear, distraction, or pressure. It means allowing the Holy Spirit to synchronize your inner world with divine operations already unfolding on your behalf. Heaven's blueprint for your day contains details you have not yet seen, conversations you will enter, decisions you will make, places you will walk into, and opportunities that will unfold. When your spirit is aligned, you begin to sense these things before they appear. You develop an internal sensitivity, an awareness of what heaven is emphasizing. You become spiritually alert and tuned in. You begin to feel when something is right, when something is off, when something needs prayer, or when something needs action. Alignment sharpens discernment. It opens the spiritual eyes. It trains the heart to perceive God's movement. Without alignment, the day can feel scattered, overwhelming, or directionless. But when your spirit is synchronized with heaven, you move with clarity, you speak with authority, you think with wisdom, you walk with intentionality. Your entire day begins to unfold with divine orchestration. Aligning your spirit also means quieting internal noise so you can hear the instructions heaven is releasing. The world is loud. Your mind has conversations. Your emotions have demands. The enemy whispers distractions. But heaven speaks with clarity, not chaos. Heaven speaks through stillness, not confusion. When you align your spirit, you make space for divine communication. You silence everything that contradicts the voice of God. You interrupt internal conversations that pull you in different directions. You uproot thoughts that produce doubt or fear. You cleanse your emotional atmosphere. You intentionally create room for the Holy Spirit to download the direction you need. Alignment requires stillness, focus, and openness. It requires a willingness to quiet your flesh so your spirit can rise. Daily prophetic instructions are not mysterious. They are divine insights, nudges, warnings, confirmations, and revelations that guide your steps. Sometimes they come as a prompting in your spirit to make a call, delay a decision, avoid a conversation, revisit a plan, pursue an opportunity, or shift your focus. Sometimes they come as an inner witness, a deep peace, a sudden knowing, or a persistent impression that refuses to leave. So when you are aligned, you can recognize these gentle movements of the Spirit. You can discern what heaven is urging you to do. You can perceive what God is highlighting. You can sense what the day requires. Heaven releases instructions daily, but only aligned spirits perceive them. Alignment also protects you from unnecessary battles. When you follow divine instructions, you avoid traps, bypass distractions, and walk around what the enemy intended for harm. Many spiritual attacks are defeated before they even begin, simply because you were aligned enough to hear the prompt that told you to pray, to wait, to shift, to withdraw, to speak, or to stop. Alignment is a shield. It protects your peace. It governs your steps. It sharpens your decisions. It keeps you from stepping into places where the enemy has set ambushes When your spirit is aligned, you move under divine timing, and divine timing closes the door to spiritual sabotage. So to align your spirit with heaven's blueprint, you must also align your expectations. Heaven never expects defeat for you. Heaven never plans failure. Heaven never orchestrates days of confusion or heaviness. Heaven designs days of purpose, victory, clarity, and influence. When your expectations align with heaven, you stop waking up expecting problems and begin waking up expecting divine intervention. You begin expecting favor, open doors, breakthroughs, and unusual grace. You begin expecting God to speak, guide, and intervene. Expectation is prophetic. It draws into your life what you believe is possible. When you expect, according to heaven's blueprint, your posture shifts from survival to dominion, from fear to confidence, from uncertainty to assurance. Expectation aligns your emotions with heaven's intention. Alignment also requires agreement. You must agree with what heaven says about you. Agreement breaks internal resistance. Agreement crushes doubt. Agreement reinforces faith. When your spirit agrees with heaven, you begin to speak differently. You begin to pray differently. You begin to see yourself differently. Agreement gives your spirit authority to manifest what heaven has spoken. Without agreement, even the best divine blueprint cannot manifest. Heaven can reveal, instruct, and guide, but alignment happens when your spirit says yes. Yes to God's plan. Yes to God's direction. Yes to God's timing. Yes to God's correction. Yes to God's voice. Agreement unlocks manifestation. Aligning your spirit with heaven's blueprint also means letting go of yesterday. You cannot carry yesterday's exhaustion, frustration, disappointment, or emotional residue into a new day and expect clear prophetic instructions. Heaven speaks into the present, not the past. Alignment means releasing what no longer serves your destiny. It means forgiving what needs to be forgiven, loosening your grip on what drained you, and freeing your heart from what tried to bury you. Alignment requires emotional cleansing. It requires mental renewal. It requires the willingness to step into the new without dragging the old. When you release yesterday, you create spiritual capacity for today's instructions. Alignment positions you to hear heaven's rhythm. Heaven has a pace. Heaven has a sequence. Heaven has a timing. When your spirit is aligned, you stop rushing into things prematurely. You stop delaying things unnecessarily. You move with the timing of God, which brings grace into every step you take. Timing is critical. When you are aligned, you sense when to move, when to wait, when to speak, when to listen, when to advance, when to rest. Alignment eliminates confusion because the steps of the righteous are ordered, not chaotic. When your steps are ordered, everything becomes purposeful. Aligning your spirit with heaven's blueprint also enhances your spiritual authority. When you are aligned, your words carry weight. Your prayers become sharper. Your declarations become stronger. You no longer pray general prayers. You pray targeted prayers. You no longer speak random words. You speak prophetic words. Alignment increases precision. It tunes your spirit to the frequency of heaven. It allows you to say only what heaven is saying, which guarantees spiritual impact. Authority without alignment is unstable. Authority with alignment is unstoppable. Alignment also activates creativity and inspiration. Heaven's blueprint includes divine ideas, solutions, innovations, and insights. When your spirit is aligned, inspiration flows without resistance. You think differently, you create differently, you perceive opportunities in places others overlook. You receive strategies that align with your purpose. Ideas begin to flow effortlessly because your spirit is operating in the same realm where heaven releases wisdom. Alignment opens the channel of creativity that heaven continually pours into. When your spirit aligns with heaven's blueprint, you gain supernatural clarity. You begin to know what to focus on and what to release. You recognize distractions more quickly. You break cycles of indecision. You make choices with confidence. Clarity is a powerful spiritual tool because it eliminates confusion, and confusion is one of the enemy's greatest weapons. Alignment destroys confusion at its root by connecting you to divine understanding. Alignment also strengthens your resilience. When you are aligned with heaven, you are not easily shaken by what you see. You become anchored. You become spiritually steady. You face challenges with assurance because you know heaven is guiding you step by step. Alignment produces inner strength. It produces emotional stability. It produces spiritual courage. You awaken each morning grounded, centered, and empowered. Aligning your spirit with heaven's blueprint is the most powerful way to ensure that your day unfolds under divine governance. Every step, every thought, every decision, every conversation becomes part of a bigger pattern designed for your advancement. When your spirit is aligned, heaven flows through you, and your day becomes a manifestation of divine purpose. When God calls you into a season of divine repositioning, everything around you begins to shift, not because you are unstable, but because heaven has issued a new alignment concerning your life. And this alignment often requires movement, separation, and elevation in ways you did not anticipate, and sometimes didn't even desire, but are necessary for the fulfillment of what was spoken over you long before you ever understood the magnitude of your assignment. Divine repositioning is God taking you from where you have been comfortable and placing you where you will be fruitful, even if the transition feels disruptive, even if it comes through doors closing, people leaving, opportunities drying up, and paths being rerouted in ways that defy your logic. This is the realm where God does not ask for your permission to elevate you. He simply interrupts your normal because heaven has decided that your time in one dimension has expired and the next dimension is already waiting for your arrival. Repositioning is not punishment, it is preparation. It is God rearranging the landscape of your life so that everything connected to your destiny begins to align like pieces of a divine puzzle. And you may feel the tension, you may feel the stripping, you may feel the unfamiliarity of being pulled out of routines that once made sense, but every uncomfortable shift is a sign that God is moving you to a place where stagnation cannot survive. In divine repositioning, God begins to remove what you did not know was limiting you. He cuts away relationships, patterns, habits, and environments that have served their purpose but can no longer host the weight of your calling. He exposes conversations, reveals intentions, and brings truth to the surface, not to wound you, but to release you. God will never allow you to anchor yourself in a place that cannot sustain your future. When he says move, it means the atmosphere you were in has fulfilled its assignment. And even if the transition feels abrupt, sudden, or unexpected, it is often the sign that heaven has accelerated your timeline. God is not waiting for external conditions to agree with his plan. When he declares a repositioning, everything must shift to accommodate his will for your life. People may misunderstand you, environments may reject you, and old systems may no longer tolerate your presence. But this is because you have outgrown the space. Repositioning isn't about comfort, it's about capacity. God stretches you so that you can handle more, carry more, discern more, influence more, and occupy more territory than you previously imagined. In seasons of divine repositioning, you may feel isolated, but isolation is not abandonment, it is refinement. God pulls you away from the noise so he can amplify your discernment. He separates you from distractions so he can increase your clarity. He disconnects you from what drains you so he can reconnect you to what strengthens you. Repositioning often requires a wilderness season, not as punishment, but as transformation. You are being molded, shaped, and recalibrated to handle where you are being sent. This is not the time to resist the shift. It is the time to surrender to it. Because every time God positions you. He is also re-identifying you. You come out of the shift with a different authority, a sharper perception, a deeper conviction, and a stronger anointing. The version of you that existed in the previous season cannot enter the new one. Something must shed, something must stretch, something must grow, something must awaken, and something must be released. This is why the shift feels intense. Transitions always come with pressure, but pressure is the evidence of transformation. Divine repositioning does not just move you geographically or physically, it shifts you spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. God changes how you think so he can change where you walk. He expands your vision so he can expand your territory. He upgrades your faith so he can upgrade your assignment. Many times the battle is not with the shift itself, but with your internal ability to embrace it. You may find yourself wrestling with old mindsets, trying to interpret a new season with outdated understanding, but God is breaking the limitations off your perspective. He is dismantling the fear that tries to keep you tied to what is familiar. He is confronting the hesitations that make you cling to what is safe. Repositioning requires courage. And God strengthens you with a supernatural boldness to step into the unknown, because the unknown is where his glory is waiting to be revealed. Nothing about this shift is ordinary, because nothing about your calling is ordinary. God is moving you strategically, intentionally, and prophetically into positions you did not know you were qualified for, because he is not elevating your resume. He is elevating your assignment. In seasons of divine repositioning, you begin to see doors open that were never part of your original plans. You encounter opportunities that exceed your experience. You attract resources that match your destiny instead of your past. Favor begins to locate you because you are stepping into the space heaven has authorized. And where God sends you, provision follows. Where he places you, protection surrounds you. Where he positions you, authority increases in you. You are not being repositioned randomly. You are being strategically planted. Every shift is orchestrated with precision. Every connection is aligned with purpose. Every move is governed by divine timing. You may not understand every detail, but you are walking in a blueprint designed before the foundations of the world. God is placing you in a location, spiritually or physically, where his promises can manifest without resistance. Repositioning also places you before people who are assigned to your next level. God brings divine helpers, kingdom alignments, destiny partnerships, and supernatural favor into your path. He exposes you to new knowledge, new realms, new wisdom, and new influence, because you are entering a sphere that requires a higher version of you. The people who once misunderstood you will watch God place you in positions they never imagined. The same environments that once rejected you will witness your elevation from afar. Divine repositioning is God making a public statement that he has chosen, appointed, and anointed you for something beyond what your past could ever deny or disqualify. You are stepping into a realm of visibility, not for applause, but for assignment. God is positioning you so that what he placed inside you becomes undeniable. Positioning yourself for divine downloads, clarity, and strategic revelation requires an intentional shifting out of the noise of the natural realm into the frequency of the spirit, because heaven is always transmitting, but alignment determines what you receive. There are moments when God is releasing instructions, insights, solutions, and prophetic intelligence, yet many miss these moments because their spirit is cluttered. Their mind is overstimulated, and their atmosphere lacks the stillness required for reception. This is why positioning is not passive, it is an active spiritual posture where you tune your senses to the voice of God with precision and sensitivity. In this posture, you create a spiritual environment where revelation flows unhindered, where insight rises effortlessly, and where divine ideas illuminate your path like beacons of direction and purpose. There are divine downloads scheduled for your life, strategies for your assignment, clarity for your decisions, wisdom for your relationships, and insight for your next level, but they only come to the spirit that is postured to receive. Heaven does not respond to desperation without alignment. It responds to faith, focus, and spiritual readiness. Many pray for clarity, yet remain mentally entangled in confusion, internal chaos, and emotional turbulence. Clarity does not visit a troubled mind, it visits a disciplined spirit. When you position yourself before God with intentionality, you shift out of mental fog and into divine illumination. This is where answers come, where mysteries unravel, and where solutions are birthed. The moment you silence internal noise and elevate your spiritual awareness, revelation begins to flow like a river that has been waiting to break through. To position yourself for divine downloads is to create space for God to speak. It means uncluttering your mind from unnecessary thoughts, resetting your focus, and drawing your attention away from the urgency of the world and toward the supremacy of the Spirit. It is deciding that divine wisdom is not optional. It is essential. Every major move of God in Scripture began with someone postured to listen. Abraham, Moses, Daniel, David, Mary, Paul, each one positioned themselves in a place where God's voice could reach them clearly. In the same way, your next instruction is not far. It is simply waiting for alignment. God is not silent. He is speaking. But the posture required to receive is one of quieted distractions and heightened spiritual alertness. Revelation flows best in the environment of surrender, focus, and expectation. This positioning also requires spiritual sensitivity. Divine downloads do not always come as thunderous revelations. Sometimes they come as gentle impressions, holy nudges, sudden ideas, or quiet awareness. A positioned spirit learns to discern the subtle movements of God, the shift in the atmosphere, the stirring in the heart, the quickening in the inner man. Clarity often comes in layers, revelation in stages, and strategy in sequences. When you posture yourself in the Spirit, you begin to notice what others miss. You pick up divine cues, prophetic signals, and heavenly patterns that guide your steps with precision. Sensitivity is not weakness, it is spiritual intelligence. It is the ability to perceive what God is doing before it becomes visible in the natural realm. When you position yourself properly, your spirit becomes a receptor for divine strategy. God begins to unlock blueprints for your assignment, revealing the who, the what, the when, and the how. He shows you which doors to walk through and which doors to ignore. He reveals people who are divine connections and exposes those who are distractions. He clarifies which battles are yours and which ones you must walk away from. Fatigue revelation is heaven giving you insight into the best path forward. It prevents wasted time, unnecessary warfare, and misaligned decisions. When God releases strategy, he is not simply giving information. He is imparting direction that guarantees victory. Heaven's strategy is always higher, always wiser, always perfect. Positioning also involves consecration, a deliberate setting apart of your spirit, your mind, your emotions, and even your physical space for the purpose of hearing God with clarity. Consecration sharpens discernment and heightens receptivity. When you intentionally separate yourself from distractions, God begins to reveal things that were previously hidden. This is why moments of fasting, solitude, meditation, worship, and stillness are gateways to revelation. They are spiritual technologies that open the realm of divine intelligence. God often waits for you to quiet your surroundings before he speaks in detail. Many hear fragments of God's voice because they rarely give him an uninterrupted space. But when you consecrate your mind and environment, you invite the fullness of his voice to speak without interference. Clarity also comes through alignment with the word. Scripture is not merely a text, it is a spiritual instrument that tunes your inner ear to the frequency of God. When your spirit is filled with the word, you become more receptive to divine downloads because your mind is renewed, your perception is elevated, and your discernment is sharpened. The word stabilizes your emotions, so you can perceive accurately. It strengthens your spirit so you can receive deeply. It clears spiritual static so revelation can flow freely. Every divine download must be weighed, tested, and aligned with Scripture. For the Word ensures you do not misinterpret what God is saying. The more you immerse yourself in the Word, the more your spiritual receptor becomes calibrated for heavenly intelligence. Strategic revelation also requires expectation. God responds to expectancy. When you wake up with a heart expecting instruction, heaven honors that posture. When you approach prayer expecting direction, revelation begins to flow. Expectation positions your spirit like fertile soil, ready to receive seeds of wisdom. When your faith is alert, God releases insight to match your readiness. This expectation is not emotional hype. It is spiritual anticipation. It is believing that God has something specific to show you today, something that will shift your decisions, elevate your understanding, and position you for advancement. Expectation draws revelation out of the unseen realm and into your consciousness. Another dimension of positioning involves obedience. God gives more to the one who acts on what they have already received. Revelation increases where obedience is present. When God sees that you value his instruction enough to act on it, he entrusts you with deeper levels of insight. Many pray for new revelation while ignoring the last instruction God gave them. Obedience clears the channel and opens the flow. When you steward revelation well, God expands your access to more. Obedience positions you as a trusted carrier of divine intelligence and a reliable administrator of heavenly strategy. Positioning yourself for divine downloads also means being spiritually present. Many people are physically present but spiritually absent, distracted, divided, overwhelmed. But when you engage fully, with your heart turned toward God, your mind engaged, and your spirit open, you create a powerful alignment that allows revelation to flow without obstruction. Spiritual presence invites divine presence, and divine presence unlocks divine wisdom. Being spiritually present means refusing to rush through moments with God, refusing to multitask with the sacred, and refusing to treat prayer as an obligation instead of a divine exchange. When you show up fully, there is a realm in which clarity becomes your norm, where confusion loses its grip, where doubt dissolves, where answers flow consistently. That realm is accessed through positioning. When you learn to remain spiritually aligned throughout the day, aware, attentive, receptive, you begin to receive insights even while you walk, work, think, or rest. Revelation becomes a continuous stream rather than a rare moment. Divine ideas begin to drop into your spirit unexpectedly. Solutions arise suddenly. Inspiration ignites effortlessly. This is the lifestyle of those who stay positioned, a life governed by heaven's intelligence rather than human reasoning. And as you maintain this posture, you begin to function not from confusion, but from clarity, not from reaction, but from strategy, not from uncertainty, but from revelation, not from fear, but from the wisdom of God flowing through you like a river that never runs dry. Stepping into the day with supernatural momentum, fresh oil, and God-ordained acceleration requires more than a casual approach to life. It demands a deliberate activation of spiritual force, a conscious engagement with the power of God, and an intentional shifting out of human limitation into divine empowerment. Momentum in the spirit is not an accident. It is the product of alignment, authority, and divine assistance working together to push you beyond what natural strength can accomplish. When God releases momentum, things begin to move that were once stagnant. Doors begin to open that were once sealed, and pathways appear that were previously invisible. Supernatural momentum is heaven's way of thrusting you forward, elevating you, positioning you, and accelerating you into realms that your own effort could never secure. It is divine propulsion, a force that breaks delay, destroys stagnation, and uproots cycles intended to keep you stuck. When you step into your day with this kind of momentum, you are not walking, you are advancing. You are not surviving, you are progressing. You are not trying, you are moving with a pace that only God can generate. Fresh oil is more than an anointing. It is spiritual lubrication that allows you to move without friction, without strain, and without unnecessary resistance. Fresh oil equips you to operate with clarity, strength, and spiritual sharpness. It renews your strength, ignites your discernment, and saturates your spirit with divine empowerment. Fresh oil breaks the crust of yesterday's burdens, refreshes your spiritual senses, and revitalizes your inner man so you can accomplish today's assignments without being drained by yesterday's warfare. When God pours fresh oil on your life, stale patterns break, heavy weights lift, and your spirit rises with new fire. Fresh oil gives you the capacity to do what others cannot do, to endure what others cannot endure, and to accomplish what others cannot accomplish. It energizes your calling, fuels your purpose, and empowers your assignment. It is the divine substance that keeps your spiritual engine running without burnout, exhaustion, or collapse. When you start your day with fresh oil, you operate from overflow instead of depletion, from abundance instead of deficiency, from strength instead of strain. God-ordained acceleration is the supernatural ability to accomplish in days what should have taken years, to step into opportunities that bypass typical processes, to receive breakthroughs that break every timeline, and to experience progress that defies natural logic. Acceleration is God compressing time, collapsing distance, and fast-tracking your destiny. It is heaven pushing you into appointments you did not apply for, doors you did not knock on, and blessings you did not chase. When acceleration hits your life, what was stagnant becomes active, what was slow becomes swift, and what was delayed becomes delivered. Acceleration is not speed for the sake of speed. It is divine timing manifesting with precision. It is God ensuring that what belongs to you does not arrive late. It is the supernatural synchronization of your purpose with heaven's schedule. When you step into your day with God-ordained acceleration, you break free from the pace of people, opinions, and systems. And you move according to the rhythm of God's timing rather than human expectation. Stepping into the day with these three dimensions, momentum, oil, and acceleration, requires spiritual preparation. It begins with an inner posture of expectation and surrender, where you consciously align your spirit with God's will and open yourself to divine empowerment. This is not the posture of the passive. It is the posture of the awakened, the alert, the spiritually aware. It is the posture that says, God, I will not walk into this day in my own strength. I step into it with divine force. When you position yourself this way, you activate the spiritual laws that govern advancement. You stir the atmosphere around you. You shift your spiritual frequency. You awaken the supernatural machinery assigned to your life. Heaven responds to posture, and the posture of surrender mixed with expectation becomes the catalyst for momentum, oil, and acceleration to flow freely. Momentum begins with movement, but in the spirit, movement begins with agreement. When you agree with what God has spoken over your life, you activate spiritual velocity. When you reject thoughts of defeat, delay, and discouragement, you remove the weights that slow your progress. Momentum increases when you speak life, declare truth, and release prophetic words into your day. Every decree becomes a push. Every prayer becomes a thrust. Every declaration becomes a force that accelerates your advancement. Supernatural momentum builds when you refuse to remain stagnant, refuse to settle, refuse to quit, and refuse to shrink back. It builds when you choose progress, choose obedience, choose purpose, and choose faith. Momentum is strengthened when you take steps in the direction God has ordained for you, even if they are small. God multiplies steps taken in obedience and turns them into leaps taken in destiny. Fresh oil flows best in the life of those who understand the importance of spiritual renewal. Oil grows stale when you live off yesterday's encounter, yesterday's prayer, yesterday's revelation, or yesterday's strength. Fresh oil requires fresh intimacy, fresh surrender, fresh communion with God. It flows when you approach Him with humility, hunger, and honor. It flows when you engage in prayer that is not mechanical but intentional, not repetitive but relational. Fresh oil is attracted to worship, purity, and obedience. It flows when your heart is open and your spirit is yielded. It flows when you prioritize God above the demands of the day. When fresh oil saturates your life, you become spiritually fireproof, breakthrough ready, and mentally fortified. Attacks that once shook you lose their influence. Pressure that once overwhelmed you loses its grip. Environments that once drained you can no longer exhaust you. Fresh oil raises your capacity, sharpens your spiritual senses, and empowers you to carry out God's plans with excellence and resilience. God-ordained acceleration becomes your portion when your life aligns with divine timing. Acceleration comes when preparation meets opportunity, when obedience meets instruction, when faith meets God's appointed moment. It is not random, it is purposeful. It comes to those who have waited, endured, grown, and positioned themselves for divine release. Acceleration does not skip development, but it rewards development. It takes the seeds you planted in hidden seasons and causes them to flourish publicly. It takes your years of consistency and rewards them with sudden advancement. It takes your warfare and returns it with victory that arrives quicker than expected. When acceleration comes, cycles break quickly, doors open swiftly, and opportunities multiply rapidly. This is the season where the slow pace of yesterday gives way to the quickening of God today. Stepping into your day with supernatural momentum, fresh oil, and divine acceleration shifts you out of survival mode and into dominion. It shifts you out of weariness and into strength. It shifts you out of delay and into destiny. It sets the tone for everything that follows. It transforms your day from natural to supernatural, from ordinary to extraordinary, from routine to divine assignment. When you walk in these dimensions, the day does not happen to you. You happen to the day. You set the pace. You establish the atmosphere. You determine the outcome. You move with a force that hell cannot oppose, with a power that darkness cannot withstand, with a grace that circumstances cannot restrict. You move not by human effort, but by divine empowerment, propelled by heaven, fueled by fresh oil, and carried by the wind of acceleration that God Himself releases into your path. Beloved, as we stand in the sacred rhythm of this Wednesday morning, I decree that the peace of God begins to settle over your mind like a divine blanket. Today is not an ordinary day. This is a day marked in the heavens, December 10, 2025, a day assigned for realignment, for inner stillness, and for clarity in your spirit. I speak to every storm in your thoughts, every conflict in your emotions, every whisper of anxiety that tries to derail your purpose. Peace be still. The will of God is not hidden from you. It is unfolding even now. And as you step into this moment, I declare that heaven is positioning you for divine alignment. Hear me. You are not directionless. You are not forgotten, and you are not without guidance. The Spirit of the living God is recalibrating your inner compass. What has felt heavy will lift. What has felt confusing will make sense. What has felt scattered will come into order. God is pulling you back into the center of His intention, the core of His purpose, the heart of His design for your life. Let every competing voice be silenced. Let every weight fall off. Today, your mind returns to peace, and your steps return to the path He has chosen for you. Heaven is speaking. Your only job is to agree. As we pray, position yourself with expectation, agree with heaven, engage your faith, declare that today you align with God's will, and today your mind receives supernatural peace. And before we continue, I want you to like this video, subscribe to the channel for daily prayers, write amen in the comments, and also comment one thing you are believing God for today. When we declare supernatural peace over your mind, we are not speaking of a fragile human calm that wavers with circumstances. We are speaking of a realm-breaking force that descends from God Himself and takes dominion over every unsettled place within you. As you listen, allow your spirit to slow down, allow your breath to become steady, and allow your inner world to recognize that peace is not something you chase, it is something you receive. Peace is not earned, it is inherited. It is a divine atmosphere your Father has already prepared for you. When heaven releases peace, it is not temporary. It is sustaining, correcting, stabilizing, and recalibrating. This peace goes beyond what your natural mind can comprehend. It goes beyond logic, beyond explanation, beyond anything that has ever tried to disrupt your emotional state. This peace arrives like a soft whisper and yet carries the weight of God's authority. It moves through your thoughts, through the cracks of your worries, through the chambers of your emotions, bringing alignment back to every area that has slipped into unrest. As the peace of God descends, it begins to address the storms you have not spoken about, the storms you buried because you did not know how to articulate the depth of what you were feeling. The silent battles, the unspoken fears, the private moments where your mind felt overwhelmed. Those places are not hidden from God. He sees the unrest behind your smile. He sees the tension you've been trying to manage on your own. And His response is not frustration. His response is peace. His peace says, you don't have to hold that anymore. His peace says, release your grip on what has exhausted you. His peace says, your mind belongs to me and I will settle what has been shaking you internally. When God speaks peace, He is not just calming the surface. He is healing the root. He is going into the core of the conflict, the center of the pressure, the origin of the fear, and He is dismantling it from within. This supernatural peace silences internal storms, not by ignoring them, not by pretending they do not exist, but by overwhelming them with a force greater than their noise. Picture peace as a river, steady and unstoppable, flowing into every corner of your mind, washing away the residue of yesterday, the worries of tomorrow, and the pressure of today. This peace quiets the overthinking. It quiets the fear of outcomes you cannot control. It quiets the narrative of failure, the voice of comparison, and the echo of insecurity. It is a peace that does not ask your permission. It simply takes its rightful place. And as it settles, you begin to notice the shifting, the internal winds dying down, the emotional waves leveling out, the mental fog lifting. You begin to breathe again. You begin to think again. You begin to feel yourself returning to center, to clarity, to groundedness in God. This peace is supernatural because it does not require anything around you to change before it begins changing you. You may still have uncertainties in front of you. You may still have decisions waiting. You may still have responsibilities that feel heavy, but peace speaks to all of them and says, you will not overwhelm my child. Peace acts like a divine shield, covering your mind from the bombardment of negative thoughts and intrusive patterns. Peace interrupts mental cycles that have gone on for too long. It stops the spiral and replaces it with stability. It stops the racing and introduces rest. It stops the tension and brings softness back into your soul. Nothing in your external world has to shift before your internal atmosphere is transformed, because supernatural peace is not dependent on conditions. It is dependent on God. When you declare supernatural peace, you are giving heaven legal access to intervene in the places you have tried to manage alone. Peace becomes the guard over your heart and mind. It becomes a protector, a filter, a stabilizer, ensuring that not every thought can enter, not every emotion can dominate, not every fear can take root. Peace begins to organize your internal environment, putting things back where they belong. What is not from God loses its strength. What is not aligned with His truth loses its influence. What has been tormenting you loses its grip. Peace does not negotiate with fear. Peace dethrones fear. Peace does not argue with anxiety. Peace replaces anxiety. Peace does not tolerate chaos. Peace commands order. And the more you come into agreement with this peace, the more authority it takes inside of you. This peace quiets the voices that have been too loud. The voices telling you you're not enough. The voices telling you things will fall apart. The voices telling you God is distant or silent. Peace confronts them, and suddenly their volume drops. You realize they were never the voice of God, just the noise of pressure, fear, or past wounds. Peace gives you the discernment to distinguish between noise and truth. And as you embrace this peace, your mind begins to rest, not because everything is perfect, but because your trust has shifted from your own ability to God's sovereignty. Rest becomes a spiritual posture, not a response to circumstances. Rest becomes your new internal environment. As peace settles, clarity follows. When the mind is anxious, everything feels tangled. Decisions feel impossible. Thoughts feel heavy. Directions feel unclear. But when peace comes, the fog lifts. You begin to see with spiritual clarity what confusion once distorted. You begin to understand what fear once exaggerated. You begin to discern what anxiety once clouded. Peace sharpens your inner hearing. It heightens your spiritual awareness. It aligns your perspective back to heaven's view. With peace comes the ability to process things correctly, respond wisely, and move intentionally. Peace gives you back your spiritual grounding, your emotional equilibrium, and your mental strength. This supernatural peace also carries healing. Healing for the restless nights, healing for the overextended heart, healing for the mind that has been stretched too thin by responsibilities, relationships, or expectations. Peace is God's way of touching the wounded places without forcing you to relive the pain. Peace enters softly, but it restores deeply. It settles into the cracks of your internal world, bringing repair to what has been fractured. It makes you whole again from the inside out. It gives you back the strength you didn't realize you lost. It fills the empty places. It soothes the agitated places. It restores the weary places. Peace is not passive. It is transformative. In declaring peace, you are not merely speaking words, you are activating a spiritual force. You are drawing from a heavenly supply that never runs dry. You are stepping into a dimension of God's presence where anxiety cannot breathe, where fear cannot multiply, where confusion cannot survive. Peace is the environment of heaven, and when you declare it, you are inviting heaven to occupy the space of your mind. You are letting God's presence saturate your thoughts, influence your emotions, and govern your internal responses. You are choosing to live from a place of spiritual alignment rather than emotional reaction. Peace becomes your default, not your exception. And as peace flows, your entire being begins to realign. Your posture changes, your perspective shifts. Your emotions stabilize, your spirit strengthens. Your mind becomes still enough to hear God again, still enough to recognize his direction, still enough to receive fresh instruction. Peace creates the internal stillness required for divine communication. In that stillness, God reminds you who you are. He reminds you who he is. He reminds you that the battle for your mind is already won. This supernatural peace is your inheritance, your right, your portion for today. Let it settle over you now, quieting every storm within you as God's presence fills your mind with divine calm and holy stability. When we speak of realigning your thoughts, your decisions, and your desires with God's divine will for today, we are entering into a deeply sacred and transformative inner process. Alignment is not about striving, it is about surrender. It is the quiet, gentle returning of your mind back to the frequency of heaven. It is the recalibration of your inner world so that every thought that flows through you, Every decision you make and every longing that rises within you follows the direction of God's Spirit. Alignment is the grace of being drawn back into divine order, where your soul settles into the rhythm God intended for you all along. As you breathe and listen, allow your heart to exhale the weight of yesterday and inhale the clarity of God's presence. Alignment begins when you stop wrestling and start yielding, when you let the will of God guide you instead of trying to guide yourself through your own strength. This alignment is a spiritual anchoring. The mind on its own can drift so easily. It drifts into worries, into assumptions, into scenarios that have not happened, into memories that left scars, into imaginations that create fear. But when God begins to realign your thoughts, He pulls them back from the places they wander. He pulls them out of the shadows of doubt, pulls them out of the webs of overthinking, pulls them out of the cycles that drain your peace. He brings your thoughts into the here and now, into the truth of His word, and into the reality of His presence. He reorders the thoughts that have been scattered, reorganizes the thoughts that have been chaotic, and reframes the thoughts that have been influenced by pressure or fear. Divine alignment awakens a new mental clarity, a heavenly perspective that begins to override the distortions created by emotional strain or exhaustion. Your decisions begin to shift when your thoughts come under God's alignment. Decisions that once felt complex begin to simplify. A mind aligned with God no longer makes choices from panic, from insecurity, or from desperation. Instead, it moves with intentionality, with peace, with certainty rooted in divine wisdom. When God aligns you, He gives you the ability to pause before reacting, to discern before committing, to evaluate before stepping. He strengthens your spiritual intuition, making you sensitive to the subtle leading of His Spirit. Decisions begin to feel less like burdens you're carrying and more like guided steps you are taking. You no longer feel pressured to figure everything out. Instead, you begin to trust that God is revealing each step at the right moment. Alignment does not remove responsibility, but it removes the weight of confusion that once made decisions feel overwhelming. Your desires, too, come under divine alignment in this process. Human desire can easily be shaped by experiences, by disappointments, by unmet needs, or even by societal expectations. But when your desires are realigned with God's will, they begin to purify. They shift from what only satisfies the moment to what nourishes your soul for the long term. You start wanting things that bring life instead of things that drain you. You start longing for what elevates your spirit, not what temporarily distracts your pain. The desires that once felt tangled begin to unravel. The desires that were shaped by fear begin to dissolve, and in their place, God births holy desires. Desires that align with your purpose, desires that align with your growth, desires that align with the path He has designed for you. These desires bring peace instead of turmoil, clarity instead of confusion, fulfillment instead of regret. Realignment is not forceful, it is gentle. God does not drag you into His will, He draws you into it. He reminds you of who you are when you lose sight of yourself. He reminds you of His promises when circumstances try to make you forget. He reminds you of your purpose when the noise of life tries to pull you off track. Alignment is like the steady hand of the shepherd, guiding you back to the center, back to the path, back to the truth. Even when you have wandered emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, God's alignment brings you home internally. It is not a correction born from judgment, but an invitation born from love. It is God saying, I want your mind to be clear. I want your decisions to be wise. I want your desires to be healthy. I want you to walk in the fullness of what I've written for you today. As you settle into this alignment, you might feel things loosening inside of you. Old thoughts breaking away, old patterns releasing their grip, old desires melting off your heart. This is the work of God, gently removing everything that doesn't belong. The internal clutter begins to dissolve. The heaviness begins to lift. You start to feel space inside of you, space for peace, space for clarity, space for God's voice, space for direction. Alignment creates spiritual spaciousness, an inner openness where God can plant new wisdom, new strength, new vision. When your mind is cluttered, it's difficult to discern. When your spirit is congested, it's difficult to hear. Alignment clears the internal environment so that God's leading becomes unmistakable. This alignment also brings spiritual balance. There are times when emotions try to overtake your reasoning, times when your reasoning tries to override your spirit, times when fear tries to dictate your faith. Alignment brings all these parts of you back into harmony. It organizes your inner world so that your spirit leads, your mind follows, and your emotions support rather than sabotage your peace. It creates an internal order where things no longer compete for dominance inside of you. God's will rises to the top, becoming the guiding force rather than the afterthought. You stop moving from reactivity and start moving from revelation. You stop making choices from anxiety and start making choices from wisdom. You stop being pulled in multiple directions and start walking in one clear direction. In alignment, your awareness heightens. You become more sensitive to God's whispers, more discerning of his nudges, more aware of the subtle ways he directs your day. The things that were once overlooked become divine cues. The interruptions you once saw as inconveniences become moments of redirection. The opportunities you once dismissed become open doors. The conversations you once took lightly become confirmation. Alignment opens your eyes to how present God is in your daily experience. You no longer walk through the day unaware, you walk through the day attuned to heaven. Realignment daily is necessary because life pulls at you constantly. The expectations of others, the demands of your responsibilities, the pressures of your goals, the noise of your environment, all of these things tug at your thoughts, your decisions, and your desires. Without alignment, you drift. With alignment, you stay grounded. Divine alignment is the recalibration of your inner compass so that you do not live from distraction, but from direction. It is God helping you choose what matters, release what doesn't, and focus on what he is prioritizing for you in this moment on this day. This alignment softens your inner world. It removes the tension that has been building in your thoughts. It replaces your internal push with a divine flow. You stop striving and start moving with grace. You stop forcing outcomes and start trusting divine timing. You stop chasing solutions and start welcoming the wisdom that comes from being connected to God's will. Alignment creates inner ease, a spiritual gentleness, a calm confidence that allows you to face the day without anxiety dictating your steps. As alignment continues, your mind begins to settle into truth. Lies lose their power. Assumptions lose their influence. Imaginations that created fear lose their hold. You begin to think from a place of stability. Your thoughts take on the tone of the Spirit. They become more compassionate, more wise, more grounded. You begin to filter your thoughts not through worry, but through the Word. You begin to see yourself not through insecurity, but through identity. Thoughts once rooted in fear begin to root themselves in faith. Your decisions also begin to carry more weight, not heavy weight, but intentional weight. You begin to understand that even small choices shape your path. You become more mindful, more aware, more spiritually conscious of how each decision aligns you with or pulls you away from God's will. You stop making impulsive decisions. You stop rushing. You stop reacting. Instead, you pause, you listen, you sense, you discern. Decisions become conversations with God rather than burdens on your shoulders. Your desires transform in this alignment. They become holy, purified, refined. Things that once pulled you no longer have the same effect. Desires that once came from insecurity no longer hold the same influence. What you want begins to match what God wants, not because you lose yourself, but because you find your truest self in Him. You begin to desire growth, healing, peace, purpose, alignment, divine connection. You begin to desire things that bring strength, not stress. Things that bring fulfillment, not emptiness. Things that bring spiritual nourishment, not drained energy. As you continue listening, feel this alignment happening within you. Feel the internal shift. Feel the gentle recalibration. Feel the divine centering. Feel the clarity rising. Feel the peace settling. Feel your thoughts settling into truth. Feel your decisions settling into wisdom. Feel your desires settling into purpose. Alignment is happening even now, quietly but powerfully, as God brings your inner world back into harmony with His will for your life today. When you release anxiety, confusion, and emotional heaviness to make room for clarity, you are stepping into one of the most healing and transformative exchanges God offers. This is the moment where you stop carrying what was never meant to live inside you. Anxiety is a weight your spirit was not designed to hold. Confusion is a fog your mind was not created to live in. Emotional heaviness is a burden your heart was not equipped to sustain alone. As you listen, I want you to feel the atmosphere around you shifting. Imagine each breath loosening the tight places, softening the heavy places, and quieting the restless places within you. There is a calmness that comes when you stop gripping your worries and begin opening your hands to divine peace. Right now, God is inviting you into a deeper surrender, a gentler posture, a quieter state of being. You don't have to perform, strive, or chase stability. You simply need to release and receive. Anxiety often comes not from what is happening around you, but from what is happening inside you. It is the mind racing ahead into possibilities, imagining problems that may never occur, replaying scenarios that ended long ago, or carrying outcomes that are not your responsibility. When God calls you to release anxiety, He is not dismissing your feelings. He is freeing your mind from imprisonment. Anxiety is like a storm that builds quietly until it becomes loud enough to drown out your peace. But as you release it, you begin to feel the storm losing strength. You begin to feel the winds quiet down, the waves settle, the clouds thin. Releasing anxiety is not ignoring reality. It is choosing not to let fear dictate your internal world. And as you release it, clarity begins to rise. A clear mind cannot coexist with a worried mind. So when God invites you to release worry, He is also inviting you into clarity, into mental spaciousness, where peace can breathe and wisdom can flow. Confusion, too, is something God never intended for you to carry indefinitely. Confusion comes when the mind is overloaded, overwhelmed, or overstimulated. It comes when you try to solve problems emotionally instead of spiritually, when you try to make sense of situations without giving them room to unfold, when you lean on your own understanding instead of seeking divine direction. Confusion clouds your discernment, fragments your focus, and makes simple decisions feel complicated. But the moment you release confusion, your inner landscape begins to shift. The fog disperses, the knots loosen, the tension in your thoughts begins to ease. God steps in where confusion once sat, bringing understanding where there was uncertainty, illumination where there was darkness, and direction where there was hesitation. Confusion dissolves not through force, but through surrender, through letting God clarify what you cannot. Emotional heaviness is another burden that quietly builds over time. It is the accumulation of unprocessed feelings, unresolved situations, unspoken disappointments, and unnoticed exhaustion. Emotional heaviness is subtle. It settles into the heart before you realize how much weight you're carrying. It can feel like tiredness that sleep cannot fix, like sadness without a name, like pressure that has no clear cause. When God calls you to release emotional heaviness, He is calling you to put down what has been sitting on your heart far too long. This heaviness may come from people you love, responsibilities you shoulder, losses you've endured, or dreams that feel delayed. But as you release it, you begin to experience a lightness that reminds you that God never intended for you to carry the emotional weight of the world. He is the lifter of your head, the restorer of your soul. the strengtheners of your heart. Releasing emotional heaviness allows you to breathe again, to feel again, to hope again. Releasing is not a one-time action. It is a spiritual rhythm. It is an ongoing posture of letting go so that God can pour in. When your hands are full of fear, they cannot receive peace. When your mind is full of confusion, it cannot receive clarity. When your heart is full of heaviness, it cannot receive joy. So God gently invites you to loosen your grip. Release the need to control outcomes. Release the pressure to understand everything immediately. Release the habit of carrying emotional weight silently. In this releasing, something beautiful begins to happen. Your spirit becomes uncluttered. Your emotional space expands. Your inner world becomes quiet enough to hear God's voice again. As clarity begins to fill the space where anxiety once lived, your thoughts start to organize themselves. You begin to notice that decisions feel easier. You begin to see solutions you couldn't see before. You begin to sense direction where you once felt lost. Clarity is God's gift to the surrendered mind. It doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper, a gentle nudge, a moment of peace that tells you what to focus on and what to release. Clarity removes the weight of confusion and replaces it with confidence. Not confidence in yourself, but confidence in God's leading. Clarity doesn't mean you know every detail. It means you trust the one who does. The more you release, the more clarity expands. Your inner world begins to breathe. Emotions settle, thoughts slow down, perspective sharpens. You become aware of what truly matters and what no longer deserves your energy. You begin to recognize which battles are yours and which ones belong to God. You begin to see what is draining you and what is nurturing you. Releasing heaviness magnifies discernment. You can now distinguish between what is urgent and what is important, what is noise and what is wisdom, what is temporary and what is eternal. Even your physical body begins to respond. When the spirit is heavy, the body feels it. When the mind is overwhelmed, the body carries tension. As you release anxiety and emotional weight, your shoulders loosen, your breath deepens, your heartbeat steadies, your posture softens. The peace of God begins to regulate not only your spirit, but your physical self. You become aware of how much your body has been holding, how much your chest has been tightening, how long your breath has been shallow. Everything becomes healing, not just in your mind, but in your entire being. Releasing also deepens your intimacy with God. When you let go of what overwhelms you, you create space for God to step in more fully. You begin to trust Him differently. You speak to Him more openly. You sense His nearness more vividly. He begins to reveal insights you couldn't hear through the noise of anxiety. He begins to guide you in ways you missed when your heart was weighed down. Releasing makes room for relationships, for connection, for spiritual clarity that transforms your day from the inside out. As you listen, I want you to reflect on this gently. What is the one thing, just one, that has been weighing on your heart lately? What is the thought that keeps looping in your mind? What is the emotion you've been quietly carrying without mentioning it to anyone? These questions are not for judgment. They are for freedom. I want you to answer honestly in the comments, because naming what you carry is the first step to releasing it. When you write it down, you are symbolically placing it at the feet of God. Releasing makes room for clarity, but it also makes room for God to move. When your mind is still, you can hear His direction. When your heart is light, you can sense His guidance. When your spirit is open, you can receive His wisdom. God wants to fill you with clarity. Clarity about your decisions, clarity about your relationships, clarity about your steps, clarity about your purpose, clarity about your day. But clarity can only fill the space that anxiety once occupied. So release, breathe, soften, and allow the divine exchange to unfold within you. And as you continue to listen, feel the weight lifting slowly. Feel the tight places loosening. Feel the pressure dissolving. Feel the fog clearing. Feel peace rising where fear once lived. Feel hope rising where confusion settled. Feel joy rising where emotional heaviness lingered. This is the gentle work of God, restoring your internal world as you release what was never meant to stay. When you activate your spiritual sensitivity to hear and follow God's leading, you are stepping into a dimension of awareness that transcends natural understanding. This is not about trying harder. It is about tuning inward, quieting the noise, and allowing your spirit to rise above the distractions of life. Spiritual sensitivity is the softening of your inner world so that the whispers of God become clear. The nudges of the Spirit become recognizable, and the direction of heaven becomes the guidance of your day. It is a sacred awakening inside you, a gentle alignment that opens your spiritual ears, sharpens your spiritual sight, and strengthens your ability to discern what is of God and what is not. As you listen, allow yourself to become still enough to sense the presence of God moving around you and within you. Let your heart quiet. Let your mind soften. Let your spirit become attentive. This is where divine communication becomes personal, where God's voice is not distant, but intimate. Spiritual sensitivity begins with awareness. Many times the voice of God isn't missing. It's simply drowned out by the noise of daily life. The hustle, the thoughts, the worries, the responsibilities create layers of sound that make it difficult to perceive the subtle movements of the Spirit. But when you choose to activate your spiritual sensitivity, you begin to peel back those layers. You start listening, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. You start noticing things you once ignored. The way peace settles in your heart when something is right. The way discomfort arises when something isn't aligned. The way certain thoughts carry a weight of wisdom that did not come from you. God speaks through impressions, through peace, through conviction, through clarity, through sudden understanding. He is always speaking, but sensitivity is what allows you to recognize his voice among the many competing voices in your mind. As your sensitivity increases, discernment deepens. You start recognizing the difference between your emotion and God's direction, between your desire and his will, between your fear and his warning. Discernment is spiritual intelligence, knowing which thoughts to ignore, which opportunities to embrace, which relationships to nurture, and which paths to walk away from. You begin to feel a shift inside yourself, a sacred knowing that isn't loud, but firm, not forceful, but unmistakable. You begin to sense the Spirit's leading in things that once felt confusing. Where there was uncertainty, you begin to feel a quiet guidance. Where there was hesitation, you begin to feel a gentle push. Where there was confusion, you begin to feel clarity. Discernment allows you to navigate the day with spiritual clarity instead of emotional reaction. Activating spiritual sensitivity also requires stillness, not physical stillness alone, but inner stillness, an internal calm that makes space for God's presence. When your thoughts are rushing, when your emotions are swirling, when your mind is overloaded, it becomes difficult to receive divine direction. But when you quiet your inner world, even just for a moment, your spirit becomes more receptive. Stillness is not the absence of activity, but the presence of awareness. It is the sacred pause where your spirit listens. In stillness, God reveals what you missed, clarifies what you misunderstood, and realigns what drifted. You begin to sense his presence, not just during prayer, but throughout your day, in simple moments, in quiet reflections, in everyday decisions. Stillness anchors you to his presence. Spiritual sensitivity also grows through attentiveness. The more you pay attention, the more you begin to see spiritual patterns in your life. You notice how God comforts you through certain scriptures, how he warns you through discomfort, how he confirms things through repeated signs, how he guides you through peace that settles into your spirit. Attentiveness opens you to the ongoing dialogue God is having with your soul. You begin to realize that divine communication is not an event. It is a relationship. God speaks in layers, in whispers, in impressions, in moments that seem ordinary but carry spiritual significance. When you are attentive, those moments become revelations. As you activate this sensitivity, you will also notice an increase in inner peace. When your spiritual ears open, your anxieties begin to fade, not because circumstances change, but because you recognize that you are not navigating alone. You begin to trust the divine guidance leading you. You begin to rest in the assurance that God goes before you, walks beside you, and speaks within you. The peace that arises from spiritual sensitivity is profound because it is rooted in the awareness that you are divinely guided, divinely protected, and divinely aligned. Peace becomes your confirmation. When something carries peace, even if it challenges you, you know God is in it. When something disrupts your peace, even if it looks appealing, you sense that God is cautioning you. Sensitivity also strengthens obedience. When you can sense God's leading clearly, following Him becomes less about struggle and more about willingness. Obedience doesn't feel heavy, it feels natural. You begin to move with God instead of resisting Him. You begin to trust His timing, His wisdom, His redirection. You start letting go of things He asks you to release, even when you don't fully understand why. You start embracing things He leads you toward, even if they stretch your comfort. Obedience becomes a flow, less thought, more trust, less fear, more surrender, less hesitation, more faith. Your relationships also begin to benefit from your increased spiritual sensitivity. You start perceiving people with more clarity, compassion, and discernment. You recognize who is aligned with your growth and who is pulling you off course. You sense who carries peace and who carries chaos. You understand the emotional and spiritual undercurrents in conversations. You begin to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. Your interactions become guided by the Spirit rather than driven by reaction. Sensitivity helps you protect your peace, establish healthy boundaries, and cultivate meaningful connections. Spiritual sensitivity also enhances your decision-making. Decisions that once felt overwhelming begin to feel clearer. You sense when God is giving you a green light and when He is instructing you to pause. You begin to feel drawn toward certain paths and gently redirected from others. You notice open doors and sense which ones are truly from God. You no longer move based solely on logic, but on spiritual insight. Your mind works, but your spirit leads. Decision-making becomes less stressful because you recognize it as a collaboration between your faith and God's guidance. As your sensitivity deepens, you begin to notice divine timing more clearly. You start realizing that delays are not denials, they are protection. You understand that closed doors are not rejection, they are redirection. You begin to feel aligned with the cadence of heaven, no longer rushing what God is preparing, no longer resisting what God is arranging. You sense the rhythm of divine timing guiding your step. Patience becomes easier because your spirit knows something your mind hasn't fully grasped yet, that God is orchestrating every detail. Your emotional world also begins to transform. Spiritual sensitivity helps you regulate emotions more gracefully. You become aware of the emotions that are not yours, the emotions that come from stress, the emotions that arise from fear. You begin to detach from what does not belong in your spirit. You start recognizing emotional triggers and responding with spiritual maturity instead of reacting impulsively. You begin to feel grounded, centered, steady. Your emotions come under the authority of your spirit, and your spirit comes under the authority of God. As you continue listening, imagine your spirit opening like a gentle flower toward the sun. Feel the layers of distraction falling away. Feel the noise inside you quieting. Feel the awareness of God's presence becoming clearer. Your spiritual senses are awakening. Your inner hearing is sharpening. Your discernment is strengthening. You are becoming aware not just of what is visible, but of what is spiritual. You are stepping into a place where God's leading becomes the compass of your day. In this moment, let your spirit say yes. Yes to hearing, yes to sensing, yes to following, yes to being guided, yes to being aligned, yes to being spiritually awake. You do not have to force it. Simply allow it. Sensitivity grows in the soil of surrender. It deepens in the atmosphere of stillness. It expands in the presence of God. And as your sensitivity awakens, your entire life begins to shift into the flow of divine guidance. This sensitivity is not for a select few. It is for you. You are capable of hearing God. You are capable of sensing His presence. You are capable of being guided by His Spirit. And as you activate the sensitivity, your day, your decisions, your inner world, and your spiritual journey will begin to move in a clarity you have long prayed for. When you step into the day with confidence, knowing heaven has already prepared your path, something powerful shifts inside you. This confidence is not arrogance, nor is it built on your abilities, your resources, or your plans. It is a calm, steady assurance that rises from the awareness that God has gone before you, arranged the details, secured the outcomes, and aligned the moments you have not yet lived. Confidence rooted in heaven is gentle, peaceful, and unshakable. It's not loud, it's settled. It's not forceful, it's assured. It's not based on what you see, it's based on what God has already established. As you listen, allow yourself to breathe into the reality that today is not a random day. You are walking into a day prepared by God's intentional hand. Every step you take is covered. Every decision you face is guided. Every challenge you encounter is already accounted for in His plan for your good. This heavenly confidence comes from trust. Trust that is built not on what you feel, but on who God is. You may wake up uncertain about many things, uncertain about outcomes, uncertain about timing, uncertain about people, but you never have to be uncertain about God's faithfulness. When you place your day into His hands, you are not hoping things will turn out well. You are walking in the assurance that things are already orchestrated. Heaven does not improvise. God does not react. He prepares. Before you entered this day, He arranged the conversations you need, the opportunities you will meet, the strength you will require, the grace you will draw from, and the protection you will walk under. You move with confidence because you are not walking into the unknown. You are walking into a prepared place. This confidence also brings calmness. Anxiety loses its grip when you realize the path is not yours to construct, but yours to follow. The weight lifts when you understand that you are not the architect of your destiny. God is. Your responsibility is obedience. His responsibility is outcome. Your responsibility is presence. His is preparation. You don't have to control everything. You just have to walk with the one who does. Confidence begins to flow when you stop striving to secure what God has already secured. You begin to breathe differently. You begin to think differently. You begin to move differently. Calm confidence settles into your spirit and becomes the soundtrack of your day. When you embrace this confidence, you stop second-guessing yourself. Doubt dissolves, not because you suddenly feel capable, but because you know you are accompanied. God is not behind you shouting instructions. He is beside you guiding your steps. You start to feel supported, held, steadied. You begin to believe that you are where you need to be, doing what you need to do, becoming who God designed you to become. Second guessing is replaced with inner certainty, a certainty that does not come from understanding the plan, but from trusting the planner. You start to flow instead of forcing. You start to respond instead of reacting. The pace of your spirit slows into peace. As heavenly confidence grows within you, fear begins to lose power. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, a hesitation, a worry, a quiet expectation of something going wrong. But confidence in God confronts fear at its root. It whispers to your soul, you are not alone in this. It reminds you that the God who led you into this day is the same God who will carry you through it. Fear cannot coexist in a heart that knows it is guided. Even when uncertainties arise, confidence keeps you anchored. The situations that once triggered panic now meet a settled spirit. The challenges that once overwhelmed you now meet a strengthened soul. Confidence doesn't remove fear instantly, but it replaces fear's control with trust, authority. This confidence also reshapes your perspective. You stop seeing obstacles as threats and begin seeing them as instructions, signals pointing you toward growth, towards divine timing, towards spiritual maturity. You recognize that closed doors are not punishment, but protection. You start perceiving delays differently. Instead of seeing them as setbacks, you understand them as divine rearrangements. This shift in perspective deepens your calmness because you no longer interpret life through fear, but through faith. Your lens changes, and with that, your internal world begins to settle into a holy steadiness. Walking in this confidence also changes the way you carry yourself. You move with quiet authority. You speak with clarity. You make decisions from peace, not pressure. You stop apologizing for being who God called you to be. You begin to value your time, your energy, your spirit, your calling. You begin to protect your peace because you recognize its divine importance. Confidence built on God makes you less reactive to people's opinions, less intimidated by challenges, and less controlled by circumstances. You become anchored, not in yourself, but in heaven. This confidence also strengthens your ability to take steps of faith. When you know heaven has prepared your path, you stop hesitating to walk forward. You stop shrinking back from opportunities that stretch you. You stop resisting the growth that God is calling you into. You move with courage, not because the road is easy, but because the guide is trustworthy. Even when you don't see what's ahead, confidence nudges you forward. Even when you don't feel fully ready, confidence reminds you that God equips you as you go. You no longer wait for everything to make sense before moving. You move and watch God make sense of it as you obey. This heavenly confidence also strengthens resilience. When challenges come, and they will, they no longer destabilize you the way they once did. You bounce back quicker. You recover with grace. You stand firm even when shaken. You recognize that challenges are temporary, but God's preparation is eternal. Resilience grows when you realize that nothing you face today is catching heaven by surprise. God factored every difficulty into your development. He built strength into your spirit, wisdom into your journey, and protection into your path. Heavenly confidence gives you the ability to endure without losing peace. As this confidence expands, you start seeing miracles in motion. Small things begin to align. Unexpected opportunities appear. Conversations become divine appointments. Solutions arrive without striving. Strength rises without explanation. Peace settles without effort. You begin to notice that the more you trust, the more God reveals. The more you release control, the more open doors you walk through. River responds to confidence because confidence flows from faith, and faith is the language of heaven. This confidence also deepens your gratitude. You start recognizing the fingerprints of God on the simple moments, on the breath in your lungs, on the ideas in your mind, on the people who support you, on the strength that carries you, on the grace that sustains you. Gratitude anchors confidence because it keeps your heart aware of God's active presence. Every blessing becomes a reminder that you are not walking blindly, you are walking guided. Gratitude reinforces trust, and trust reinforces peace. As you continue listening, imagine the weight of worry falling off your shoulders. Imagine the tightness in your chest loosening. Imagine the doubts in your mind dissolving. Imagine the fear in your heart fading into the background. Feel yourself stepping into this day with a calm assurance that is not self-made. It is God-given. Feel yourself walking with a steadiness that comes from knowing heaven has already arranged the path beneath your feet. Feel yourself becoming grounded, centered, sure. Confidence wells up inside you, not as pressure, but as peace. You are walking into a prepared day. You are stepping into divine timing. You are moving under heaven's guidance. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not unprotected. Every moment you are about to encounter is already touched by God's hand. Every place your foot will step is already under divine supervision. Every breath you take is supported by grace. And as you accept this reality, you begin to walk in the kind of confidence that transforms not only your day, but your entire life. Confidence becomes your posture, peace becomes your atmosphere, trust becomes your rhythm, and God becomes your guide in every step you take today. As we come to a gentle close, allow your spirit to rest in the calm that has settled over you. Let everything you've heard today linger softly in your mind as a reminder that you are not stepping into this day alone. The peace of God is surrounding you. The clarity of God is guiding you, and the presence of God is covering every step you will take. Feel the stillness in your heart as a sign that heaven is near. Let yourself breathe deeply, knowing that divine alignment has already begun its work within you. Carry this peace with you into every conversation, every responsibility, every decision. Let it be the anchor that keeps you grounded when things feel busy or uncertain. Whenever you start to feel overwhelmed, return to this moment. Return to the truth that God's will is unfolding for you, that his voice is leading you, and that his strength is sustaining you. Nothing you face today is stronger than the God who walks beside you. Let your confidence rise gently as you remember that heaven has prepared your path. There is nothing random about where you are or what you are walking into. Grace has gone before you. Favor has gone before you. Protection has gone before you. You can move through this day without fear because you are divinely guided, divinely supported, and divinely aligned. Take each step knowing that God sees you, knows you, and cares for every detail concerning you. As you continue through the hours ahead, choose to remain spiritually sensitive. Listen for God in the quiet moments. Watch for his hand in the unexpected places. Follow his peace even when it leads you into unfamiliar territory. Allow his presence to be your compass. The more you stay attuned to him, the more clearly you will see that he has been orchestrating your steps all along. You are in the flow of his will, and there is nothing more powerful or more peaceful than that. And as you go, stay connected, like the video, subscribe to the channel for daily prayers, write amen in the comments, and share one thing you are believing God for today. Let your engagement be an act of faith, a declaration that you are expecting God to move. You are not just listening, you are participating in what heaven is releasing over your life. Walk forward gently, confidently, and peacefully, knowing that God's presence is with you in every breath of this day.